Some years ago, I came to a place in my life where I grew tired of casual sexual liaisons. There's a movie called Dangerous Liaisons with Glenn Close. Y'all should see that if you haven't seen that. I grew tired of dangerous liaisons, I would say, and just was at a place in my spirit and in my soul where it began to become painful for me to have one-night stands, where there was nothing else other than the moment of whatever it is that we shared sexually. So there was no relationship. It was just sex. And that became painful for me. You know, I began to want something more than that for myself. And there was a period, I've always been like this, but there was a period where, and this goes for drugs too, but there was a period that after you enjoy whatever the pleasure is, that there's a vacuum. There's a vacuum. And there's an intense low after the high. So after the pleasure of having casual sex with no commitment, no strings, friends with benefits, some people might call it, or sexual buddies, some other people call it, substituting another word for sex. Rhymes with duck. I'm not going to say it, but you know what I'm talking about. Having that in my life. I'm just saying. Try to keep it as real and as raw and as relevant as I can with you.
Real, raw, and relevant. I love that.
Real, raw, and relevant. So after having those and having that and living out that space in my life for so long, and most of my adult life living in that space, some years ago it just came to a point where that low after was not worth the high during. And I just wanted something more for myself. So I made a promise to myself that the next time I gave myself sexually, that I would be sharing more than just my body, that I would be sharing my life as well. And since that time, I have abstained sexually. I've just been sitting on the side and not partaking. So my abstinence started with a promise to myself, and that was over 3 years ago. And my intention at that time was to sanctify myself. And sanctify means set apart for a sacred purpose. And my intention was to set myself apart, set my body, set that part of my life apart, and cultivate sacred purpose in that area of my life. And sometimes it's hard to build the plane while you're flying it. Sometimes you got to land the plane, work on the repairs, okay, and then send it up again. And what I was trying to do, okay, all those years was to repair the plane while it was still in the air. So I landed, I landed the plane for a minute, and it's been 3 years, and that plane has been landed. And in the meantime, I've been working on cultivating that part of my character and using the unreleased sexual energy to create something other than pleasure. What most people get from sex, the number one thing that people get from sex is pleasure. And so, but you can use the sexual energy for other things because it is energy. In fact, it is the most powerful energy on the planet. It literally is the Big Bang because it is literally the Big Bang, which is why you get that kind of tremble when you have an orgasm, because it is creating, in that moment, you are unleashing the creative life forces. It's the same energy that created all of it. It is. It is. It's the same energy that created everything you see. It's that life force energy. That's why we feel what we feel when we release like that. So you can use that energy for other things. And so that's what I've been cultivating in the meantime. But I do want to take you back to, this is the first of two, and then I'll tell you who's here after I do this. This is the first of two fireside chats that I want to have this morning. I want to take you back to my journal in 2005, just so you can see what my state of mind was when I made this promise to myself. Now, I made this promise in 2010, but it took 5 years to really commit to the promise. So in 2005, what I'm getting ready to read to you, I was writing about it, but I still kept living and partaking in sexual activity. It wasn't until 2010, so much change ushered in 2010. That really was like a wave of consciousness that hit me that is really hard to describe. The first wave came in 2010, started with this program, and the second wave came in 2012, in the summer of 2012. Those are two huge waves of consciousness that have overtaken my life, such that I can't even hardly describe it to you. I've tried in the days since to really put it into words, but that first wave, when I made this commitment, Michelle, you'll remember back when we were talking about raw foods and I started exercising, and we were having Adrian Williams on and Wayne Akai. I mean, that was the first wave of consciousness, just really trying to let go of some things in my life.
Transitioning.
Yes, it was transitioning, exactly. A lot of transitioning energy came then. This was the first real thing in the media space that I had done since leaving that TV One job, and it was just a big year, 2010. But 2005 is when I left Discovery Channel, and I wrote this shortly thereafter, because that was a huge transition and change in my life, too. And at the time, I was still involved in a lot of things that were unhealthy for me. So let me just ask you to be with me in this space for a few minutes while I just take you back to what my mindset was in 2005 that led to that decision that I made in 2010. Here's what I wrote in my journal. Sometimes you have to take a deep breath. And it may seem like the deepest breath you've ever taken. Then you've got to let it go and begin again. You've got to turn the page and don't look back. We are in a perpetual state of detoxification, and we are also in a perpetual state of relapse and recovery. It's a daily cycle, and it's not a bad thing. Everything facing us right now is the work of the day, is the purpose for which we face another sunrise and sunset. I know what lies before me as I write. Only you know what lies before you this day. Whatever or whoever it is, the process for detoxifying yourself in the situation is the same. Minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, season after season. We create better lives for ourselves, one decision at a time. What are you willing to never do again and never look back on? What one decision are you willing to make right now to create a better life for yourself? There are moments of suffering, very real, we all face. When you can't have what you want when you want it, for whatever reason, there exists a terrible and agonizing period of suffering one endures. I ask myself if the cravings ever stop, if we will ever be free from the chase of demons. We can all push beyond our cravings. We can live through the moment of suffering, enduring it, and come through that hellish period. There is and always will be a price to be paid for the way we use the time we have. Whenever you turn a page or turn over a new leaf, eliminate a habit, or revise your lifestyle, there will be a period of suffering to be endured. Once you have the awareness of the change you seek and desire, one then must make a decision to never look back. Remember Lot's wife. She turned into a pillar of salt for looking back upon the life the angel of God was rescuing her from. When change is what we desire and seek, when change is what we know we need, when we decide to change, we have to trust that change brings a better life. And we have to believe in and crave this better life more than we desire the life currently before us. This requires a leap of faith. Between the moment of your awareness for change and the moment you actually experience the full manifestation of the change you seek and desire, there exists a period of suffering. Times when your fleshly body will desire to walk its way, and you will have to seize and subdue your lower impulses that want to return to the very thing you decided to let go. This is a period during which your fleshly body will experience yearnings that will test your will, your resolve, your commitment to a better life, and ultimately, your trust in God. This is Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days, being tempted by the devil and finally telling him, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. The time during which you deny yourself your fleshly bodily pleasures is your period of suffering. And one of the greatest rewards of suffering is that you are killing your stronghold. Whatever it is keeping you bound is destroyed when you endure suffering, when you starve yourself of the pleasures bringing you down. Those temporary states of feel-good that fail to bring real happiness, lasting contentment, and inner joy. Another reward of suffering is that you will learn things about yourself you may have forgotten or never knew before. You will experience a version of yourself that is more authentic than the shell of your being you celebrate and enjoy while engaging in bad habits and lascivious behavior. In other words, through suffering, you will gain access to your higher self. And it is in this higher self where you will actually live out all your heart's desires. Something more comes from whatever it is we struggle with. Something more comes from the demons we wrestle. Something more comes from the habitual act of being less than we expect of ourselves. Something more comes from fouling up your life and your mind and your body and your spirit time and time again. So I shared that with you this morning because that is the state of mind that I was in when I made that promise to engage in sacred sexual abstinence. And all these years later, I'm a single, sexually abstinent man in a sex-obsessed society. It's not easy. I'm just saying, it is not easy. Welcome. I'm sharing that also because I got asked the question this week, how do you maintain your abstinence for so long? How have you been able to do that? A brother asked me this, and anytime the brothers are asking that, that's serious because most brothers aren't even thinking about trying to maintain any kind of abstinence. So I'm sharing all of this morning because the brother asked me and because I want to share that with you. There is a grace that is over me and that is over my life to be able to do this. Not everybody is called to this. I don't recommend it for everybody, to be honest with you, because it brings up your stuff. You got to deal with your stuff. It really brings up your stuff. And when I say stuff, I wasn't going to read this, but I'm going to read this because I wrote this 2 days ago. This is real short. And this is rough because let me just say, too, Brother Quasey, you'll appreciate this. That was from 2005, what I read you. When I look now, 9 years later, there are words that I would change. There are things that I would change. Some of the thoughts are a little bit different now. I no longer see things in terms of right and wrong. I no longer put judgments on my behavior like that, like this was right and this was wrong. I don't see it like that now, but I just wanted to be authentic with you about what I had written at that time. I don't see things as wrong and right now. Now I see things
I appreciate
as only,
that.
Oh, for sure. I see things as energy and consequences. That's how I see things now. There is no wrong. There's just energy and the consequences of whatever energy you choose to create. That's how I see things now.
And growth and insight.
For sure.
You know?
For sure. So I was just being true to what I wrote to the time so that you could understand my state of mind, but I would word some of that a little bit differently now. But there is a grace over my life when it comes to this. This is not something that I would recommend for everybody, and it's not something that's easy to do. But this is what I wrote the other day. This is rough, but I'm going to read it because I want to share it with you. It makes the point of the day-to-day awarenesses and struggle of maintaining abstinence. This is what I wrote on Thursday of this week. So what is this, Saturday? Because I was writing about how orgasms, just like I just said, how orgasms come to teach you things. There are things that you can learn from having an orgasm, and we usually stop at the pleasure. But there are other things that orgasm can teach. And what I wrote here is that there is an intimacy that is oftentimes created during the sexual experience, created by pleasure, most certainly, but also created by the choice of that particular someone, by that particular someone with whom to create and experience that pleasure and that intimacy. So the desire is, for both the pleasure and the intimacy. In the absence of pleasure, sexual pleasure, and the intimacy of someone who chooses me, I am present with myself, okay? I am present with myself. And in this solo space, I can most certainly produce pleasure, but can I create intimacy? What has happened, Michelle, is that my spirit has caught up to the demands and the needs of my body, all right?
Wow.
Yeah, when men are having casual sex, our spirits aren't caught up yet. We're all about, we look down and see what we got. We feel what it feels like. We know what we want to make it feel like. We're all in the body with that. But there will come a day.
In the moment.
In the moment and in the body, yes. And there comes a day when your spirit man will catch up to all of that, and your energies will be balanced. And once your energy's balanced, you have a different awareness on things, and that's what you're hearing me read about. But listen, I want to finish this, because this is 2 more paragraphs I wrote. Again, this is all rough, and I just wrote this the other day. The awareness is that I want to share more than my body and my bed. I want to share a life, minds, aspirations, time. Orgasm brings information. It comes, as all things do, to teach you what you will allow yourself to be taught, because, again, it's life force energy. It's a lot of information in orgasm. There is something terribly alluring, even enticing, about sharing a reality in the sexual space that only lovers share, that no one else is allowed to enter and participate and even know about. That is part of the intimacy. That is a bond shared from pleasure, created by choosing and by being chosen, if only for those moments, if only in those moments, for those moments. The awareness is that if I wake up, the awareness is that if I woke up to it, if I allowed it to be so, if I opened my eye and my ear and my heart to it, every orgasm could be a teacher. That's what I was writing about today.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of what you're hearing, too, comes from the process of landing the plane. You know, I couldn't have shared this with you, and my spirit probably wouldn't have caught up and balanced the way that it has with me still practicing while the plane is in the air. You know what I'm saying? So some of this has come from sanctification. This is a word that turns a lot of people off because it can come across as self-righteous. But what sanctify means is set apart for a sacred purpose. So when you go to church, or even in your personal spiritual discipline at home, if you have rituals that you do at home, and certainly you'll see this in church, there are certain utensils, certain chalices, if it's a Catholic church, certain implements that are used maybe with communion or other things that are set apart just for that purpose. Even in an everyday home, in the china cabinet, those are dishes that were sanctified. You only brought those out during certain times. You had your everyday plate, and then you had your sanctified plate.
Yeah.
They are set apart. And so some of the wisdom that you're hearing is coming from being set apart for 3 years now. And so there's a lot that happens whenever you get out of the game and sit on the sidelines and observe it and watch it. You really start to see what's going on. And I'll even go here. This is as deep as I'm going to go, so don't push me.
Hey, babe, you've gone so deep, I'm already like, I ain't pushing no
I know,
more.
your mouth is already hanging open, right? What happens, too, is when you make this commitment to yourself, and then I do meet you, and I do want to spend time with you, and I do want to kiss you and caress you and feel all your little pretty places and stuff, there comes a decision that you have to make that, no, I'm not going to see your genitals. No, we might lay in the bed together. I might caress you. We may sleep all night in the same bed together, but I'm going to keep my underwear on. You're going to keep your stuff on, and we're going to just have intimacy. That is intimacy. And this is what I'm learning. That's intimacy. So that I don't even want to see your parts. I don't even want to see them. I might want to feel them, but I don't want to see them. I'm not even going to, no, I'm just telling the truth. I'm not even going to feel them, really, honestly, when this is happening. Because in 3 years, I've had the opportunity to be intimate, and I've availed myself of the opportunity to be intimate. But these are the boundaries that I would set. And my desire might be there, but I've learned that grace is up in my life. So I'm not going to cross that boundary. That promise kicks in, even if I'm being intimate with you and enjoying you with my clothes on, that promise kicks in. And I'm going to tell you, it creates a desire that is really beautiful. I feel clean. I feel whole. I feel value-based. I feel like I am more attractive because that this boundary is in place. And so I'm just saying, I'm sharing my truth here. This is all the answer to how do I maintain this sacred sexual abstinence. I used to use the word celibate, and I choose not to use that word anymore because it's so loaded and it has so many different meanings out in the matrix that I choose to use the word abstinent, that I'm abstaining from partaking in the sexual act. But in the meantime, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, in the meantime, I've been doing a lot of studying, and I've been learning how to use my life force energy, my sexual energy, for other things in my life. You really can use your life force energy, your semen, your sexual fluids, your orgasm. You can use that to raise up your higher spiritual consciousness. And also you can use it to get clear on your higher life purpose. Because when you're not engaging, this is true for drugs, this is true for sex, this is true for anything that you've been addicted to. And I can safely say that I was addicted to casual sex. When you are addicted to something, you end up spending a lot of time, money, and resources putting toward that thing. But when you stop doing it, you have all this time on your hands. And then you get to really sit and think about, what was I thinking? What was I doing? Where was my head? Where was my heart? How could I have been so lost? What? And when you start sitting in all of that and dealing with all of that, up comes the wisdom, the consciousness, the awareness. All these things begin to rest on you and begin to blossom in your heart that you really didn't give time to before, because part of what's going on out here in the sexual, all these sexual acts that are being performed, in all the drugs that are being done, people are avoiding themselves. They're working out their issues inside their partner. They're working out their issues, and particularly men are working out their issues in sexual ways. That's why you can hear someone say, I need to have sex, I need to release some tension, because that's how they're doing it. They're working out their stuff in somebody else or on somebody else. That's how a man can have sex with so many partners and it mean nothing. Because it could be any vagina. It could be any it could be any piece of equipment that works. It just needs to be flesh. It's just the pleasure principle, as Janet Jackson sang about years ago, that people are trying to reach. It's not anything deeper than that for most men. It's just the pleasure principle. And the pleasure principle is very, very powerful. Literally, your life force energy is Pandora's box. Once you open it, and once as a teenager, when you first had that spill of fluid for the first time and you were like, what is this? Once that happened, you're off to the races. It will take the rest of your life to understand and to harness and to be able to really be focused and disciplined with how you use that power, because it is the most powerful force on the planet. So I hope that has helped the brother who reached out to me and asked for some insight onto my journey. That's as much as I can share with you today about what that's been like for me. It's not easy, but I'm committed to it, and I know that I'm becoming a better man in the process. I am cultivating my character in a way that is beautiful for me. And so I highly recommend it to anybody who wants to get off the train for a minute, and at the same time I realize that you have to be called to that and that there has to be a grace on your life as you go about doing that. I say called to it because I'm talking to spiritual people out there who know exactly what that means. And when I say called to it, when I'm called to this way, you can be called to not, you can live a life of not having sex, casual sex, and it not be a calling, because it doesn't really connect to your higher life purpose in any kind of way. When I say called to it, I mean that I'm very clear that it is connected to my higher life purpose for all of the reasons, scientific reasons that I've tried to break open here. That really is I'm consciously studying, and this is not happening for a lot of brothers who aren't having sex. They're sitting aside, but they're still not studying their life force energy. That's what I mean when I say calling. It's a little deeper for me. It's a little deeper than just not having sex. Really, I came out of that and got called into understanding, because I'm a scientist with myself, what is it that's going on here? What is it about this life force, about this semen, about this sexual act that would make me consciously set on the side all of my better judgment for all of these years? What is that? That's powerful. Whatever that is powerful. And I wanted to learn and want to learn what that is. And what it is the same thing that created the universe. It is life. It literally is life in us.
That's what it is.
It is life. And so that life just happens to come with a pleasure principle, and that's really what we're seeking, is the pleasure principle. That's what we're addicted to, is the pleasure principle. There's a lot of other things that come with that life, but we stop at the pleasure principle of it. And it's the pleasure principle that will make you, just like a drug addict, will make you sit all of your better judgment on the side just to get the pleasure. And at some point when your spirit catches up, the pleasure will not be enough. The pleasure will not be enough.
I just wanted to, I know you don't need me to do this, but I just want to commend you for taking this journey, because think about it. Now that you are on this journey, and you're not even complete with this journey, look at all the information you're able to bring back to, not just to the brothers, but just to everyone, just because you dared, that you were brave enough to take this journey.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I'm grateful to hear that, and I receive it. Honestly, any person in the public space will tell you this. You don't do it for other people. You try to save yourself first. And then you realize that once you learned a few things and you're committed to sharing them, that it really helps a lot of people in the process. So I'm grateful that everything or anything that I share here is useful to anyone that's listening. Really, it was a brother trying to save himself. And I want to go back to what Michelle said, because I think this is important, because I think you're right. You don't have to be called to it to make some of these decisions. But because I was called and am called to a higher spiritual calling that I've been aware of my entire life. This is the beautiful burden of a calling. Because once you're aware of it, you can go out here and act a pure D fool, as my grandmama would say, probably. But you're never going to do it with peace. All along, all those years ago when I was acting out, I still knew even then, this is not my best. I'm doing it, I'm enjoying it, and I'm so spiritually immature that I can forget about it quickly, but it's still, you get that little feeling that this is not my best.
Not my best.
My best. This is not my best. This is not something that I should be doing, but you do it anyway. You know, you keep doing it because, again, that spiritual maturity hasn't caught up with you yet, and there's nothing you can do about it. Everything has to run its course. You have to get time on your side, and you have to get experiences behind you before it takes. You know, sometimes when you have a baby and you're trying to get the baby to take to the nipple, you got to work with it. You know, you got to get the baby to understand that this is what you do, this is your food, bite down on it, you know, you got to get the baby to take to it, and the baby might not just take to it on the first go. It's the same thing with life experiences. Even though you get that feeling like this is not what I should be doing, it just takes time for it to take, and that one day in 2010, it took that I could actually make that decision and say, enough. No matter what happens, I do not want to be in this, as Alice Walker would say, I do not want to cross this same river twice. I'm not crossing this river again. Give me a new river, but I'm not coming to this place and standing on these banks one more time crossing this same river. You just don't want to do it anymore. As our ancestors would say, you get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Of being sick and tired. Love it.
Yes. And that's where I got. And so 3 years later, it is the easiest thing to do. I don't think about it very often. There are days when it is challenging, but the benefits outweigh the hard moments. No pun intended. That's to say that. I might have. Yeah, I didn't mean to say that. Excuse me. But it's true. The benefits outweigh that. Yeah, the benefits outweigh that, because what is happening is that my character, and that's what I'm talking about today, cultivating your character, is I can see it. I can see the benefits of my character raising up to another level. Where I honestly have to be mindful is, and this is where I want to keep it real too, one of the first things that an abstinent man learns pretty quickly is that your eyes are the windows to and of your soul. That what you see with your eyes, what you look upon, can easily lead you into that space again. It is the quickest pathway to breaking your abstinence is with your eyes. So you have to be intentional with what you set your eyes on, because if I happen, and it's hard in this society because sex is being thrown at you all the time in magazines and commercials. Everything it has some kind of sexual symbolism to it. So you have to be very careful what you look at, and I have to be very careful what I look at and what I allow into my space, because sometimes seeing the pornography, which really isn't intimacy, but it will get me fantasizing about the intimacy that I talked about earlier. And it'll get me thinking about when I see people in relationships, people who have been partnered up for a long time, and I get in my head about the intimacy that they have that I don't. Because, again, as a solo person, you can still create pleasure. I can create pleasure with myself, but the question is, can I create intimacy with myself? And the answer for me so far is no. Right. So seeing that in other people's lives, you get over into a space of covetousness and jealousy and wanting what you think other people have. And so that's what I have to be mindful of. And that's where the calling kicks in. That when you know that the life that you're living right now is what you're called to, and that there's a higher benefit and purpose to the experience that you're having in the moment, that's where you fall back on your calling. And that's why I use the term calling, Michelle, because if it's not a calling for you, I think it could be a little easier to get back into that again. You know, if I didn't know that this is really part of something that I'm called to do on a higher basis. For example, I wouldn't be able to share this conversation with you if it was not part of my calling. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't have the forum to do it, and I wouldn't probably have the guts to do it, but I know that this sharing is part of what I'm called to do. It's part of my larger spiritual life purpose, so I can do it, and I am doing it. So it's very individual for each person. But I do want to say to the brother, before we take this commercial break, who wrote in, not wrote in, but he just reached out to me to ask for it, that, because I believe he is called to what we're talking about, and he is called to set himself apart for a sacred purpose. I think we're all called to that, to set yourself apart for a sacred purpose. I'm not saying that I'm going to be abstinent for the rest of my life. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm telling you one thing. I know what I want in my life, and that's wholeness, and I want divine relationship. And if I'm ever going to have that, I'm going to come to that relationship whole and complete. I could not have done that in some of the behavior that I was in before. It would not have happened. It would not have happened.
Yep.
That's good.
So that's what I'm cultivating, wholeness and completeness.
Yep.
So that when that divine relationship comes, if it does, because it may not, if it does, I know the kind of man that I'm bringing to the table.
There it is.
I know what I'm
There
bringing.
it is.
Bam.
Yep, bam.
And you know what, Michelle? And then I'm going to say this, that we're going to bounce to a commercial break, and then we can come back and carry on, or we can do something else. But because I hear respect is key, and to be really, really practical with people, honestly, I love myself enough now not to just lay with anybody. It's about me.
That's it.
I love myself enough not to just lay down. What does that song say? I'm not your superwoman. I'm not the kind of girl that you can lay down and think that everything is okay. Remember that song?
Right. That's right.
That's what I'm saying. That's not good enough for me anymore. So you got to have something else. That ain't going to do it.
Right.
It's got to be something else. That's the icing when we have the something else. What we want as men, and I'm sure women want this too, but I'm just going to speak for the brothers because I am one. What we really want is to be we want to be eligible for divine right relationship. And many of us are not eligible. We're involved in relationships, but we ain't really eligible. We're not eligible. We're not candidates for it because we're not clear and complete on our own stuff.
Right.
And that's really key. So there are a lot of people engaged in relationships, but they're not really eligible. Juanita Bynum many years ago had this sermon called No More Sheets. And she said the reason why you don't have a man is because you're not available, because you got all the sheets around you from all the men that you've slept with before. Now just let that sink in while we take this commercial break. That's what I'm saying. When you unwind all of those sheets, and get clear on and complete with why the sheets were even there. That's the work. Why did I lay down with all of those people? That's the soul work. That's the soul work. You know, and once you dig down in that place and really get clear on why, which has everything to do with your own feelings of being lost, you can cloak it in the pleasure principle if you want. And of course we get that out of it. But it's your own sense, and it was my own sense of being lost, looking for something outside of myself. That's what it's going to come down to every single time. So when you begin to fill that cup yourself, then that raises the bar, because you got to come with a little bit more than the pretty places now. It's going to take more than that. It's going to take a little bit more than that. We got to start making love to each other's minds. You know what I'm saying? You got to make love to my spirit and my soul.
Amen.
My body is the last thing you're going to get. So we got to work on all this other stuff, first.
Amen.
All right, hallelujah. And on that note, we will be right back.
Yourself to love.